This is Rosen Institute's Your Law Firm, where Ned Days and Lee Rosen cover management, marketing, finance, and new technologies for building the practice you deserve. Rosen Institute members received this episode early, as well as exclusive segments on making your law firm's expenses more variable, and an answer to a member question about purchasing a current office versus growing organically. Get access to everything you're missing at roseninstitute.com/join. Here's Ned Days.
It's time for your tech tip. I spent quite a few years traveling full-time and working remotely. It was a fun experience. I was the guinea pig for the digital nomad lifestyle at our practice, but being young and stingy and having very little regard for how off-putting I may have been traipsing around as a dirty backpacker with bad BO, it was not what you would call luxury travel. I got to visit a bunch of places, but I certainly was not doing it in style. But hearing about all of the travel sometimes leads people to think that I had a much more interesting or dangerous life than I really did. I once had a dentist who, in the course of random small talk, discovered how many countries I had visited and became convinced that I was some kind of black ops government contractor. I tried to assure him that no, seriously, I was living out of a backpack, staying up until 2 a.m. managing a law firm on the East Coast, and doing my laundry maybe once per month. Unusual, yes. Glamorous, not exactly. But of course, he knew that's exactly what a member of the super secret Operation Greasy Hair would say, and he kept telling me about other guys he knew in the service and how big a Jack Ryan fan he was. But despite being able to neither confirm nor deny what exactly my involvement was in overseas operations in the 2010s, international calling is something that has forever been a thorn in my side. Now, even back when I started traveling, voice over IP was decent enough, and regular video and audio conferencing services were well enough established that calling international phone numbers wasn't something I ever had to do that often. Today, that is even more the case. I think just about everybody is on board with doing a Zoom or a Teams or a Meet call. And yet, there are always people who want to do a regular old phone call for some reason, and some of them, believe it or not, are in other countries. Are they deposing foreign leaders, waterboarding people in black sites, fraudulently voting in Eurovision? I'm afraid if they told you, they would have to kill you. The bottom line is that I need to make about 1 or 2 international calls per year with these shady wheeler dealers. If you are doing international calls all the time, you likely have a solution lined up. Most voice over IP providers give you a way to add international calling credit or add international calling plans to your account. How easy that is varies by provider. But I find myself in a position where I have to make my annual or biannual international call, and I basically forget that it's international until about 5 minutes beforehand. My go-to solution for over a decade was Skype. I just kept about $5 worth of credit in there and I could fire it up in a pinch and make a call, but alas, Skype is no more, and these days I am scrambling to try to figure it out in Google Workspace for Business, which is clunky and I usually screw it up somehow. Now, I don't like having to use extra services and accounts any more than the next secret agent, but I do love products that do one thing and do it really well. So my latest solution for this problem is ZipCall, which you can find at zippcall.com. You can log in with an Apple or Google account or create one via email if you are old school. You add $5 in credit, they give you the exact rates per minute for the more than 200 countries they support, and you make the call. They have an iOS app and an Android app, but what I like is that I can just launch it in my browser on my computer without installing anything, and then capture the browser audio to my note-taking assistant if I want to. No contracts, no subscriptions, the credit never expires. It just sits there for 6 months waiting for me to panic 2 minutes before my next international call and pop open the web page. So whether the person you need to reach abroad is using a landline or cell phone because it's more difficult for the authorities to trace, or he is just doing his monthly wash in a laundromat without Wi-Fi, ZipCall is worth a look. I'm Ned Days, and that's your tech tip. And now for your moment of concise advice. For quite a few years, our office manager, who was also the person in charge of our bookkeeping, financial reporting, running payroll, and just about everything else money-related at the firm, was, unbeknownst to us, a convicted felon. And not just any kind of felon, mind you. I am sure I have committed a felony or two in my day, but somebody who had spent a long time in prison for embezzlement and check fraud. She had started with us doing routine administrative work and quietly grew into the bookkeeping and finance role. And the person who hired her, surprisingly not me if you can believe it, didn't bother to do a background check. But you know what? She was terrific. She showed up every day, hit all the deadlines, and never gave us a reason to look twice at what she was doing. And then one afternoon, an anonymous email came in alerting us that our trusted bookkeeper had a record we should be very concerned about. I am not sure if this person messaged her too, but somehow she caught wind of it and never came back. We were panicking on how to handle it, but she just left. So we did what was necessary. We hired a forensic accountant and braced for some bad news. But there wasn't any. The audit went through everything in the operating account and the trust account, every transaction going back years and years, and we weren't off by a single penny. Now, I'm not suggesting that you actively seek out people who have been convicted of financial crimes to handle your money, but I wanted to give you a very real example of probably the worst case you could possibly imagine in terms of people that you wouldn't let handle your finances to encourage you to hand it all off. Because we often create scenarios in our own heads for why our firm is special and our finances are super secret, and it's just a terrible idea not to hold on to aspects of it that just shouldn't be your problem anymore. The person we would have been most afraid of if given the information in advance did a flawless job for years. So what exactly are you protecting by doing the work yourself? In fact, the finances fell on my shoulders immediately afterward, and given that I have the mathematical aptitude of a mouse turd, that led to more drama than if somebody had just run away with all of the money, but that's a story for another day. I'm going to push you today to hand off your finances. Now, hopefully the basics are already off your plate, reconciliation and basic reporting. If your firm is more than a handful of people and you still have to write checks for anything, hopefully you trust somebody else with that authority so you don't have to do it every single time. But a lot of lawyers hold on to things that they shouldn't be, and I want you to go farther than feels comfortable and stop drawing arbitrary lines around which financial tasks are somehow sacred and you or somebody in the practice whose time is worth more than can be justified by having him or her dealing with the books and reporting are still handling. Bookkeepers are really cheap, all things considered. The good ones know what they are doing. They can do it way faster, way better, and much more effectively than somebody who isn't in the profession can. And you can give them a lot more than you probably are. When you think about what you are paying them versus what it's costing you to have an internal employee handling everything, the delta is crazy. Give them vendor management, set them up with an email address and a phone number at your practice so all invoices go to them. Put them in charge of managing your PEO or payroll provider, the bill paying, the credit line. Heck, the collections follow-up if you have that. Have them manage the accountant who does your taxes at the end of the year. That's exactly what we did, so it may surprise you that I am not talking out of my backside for this one. The only financial task left under our roof was printing the occasional paper check the courthouse demanded, and she just sent us those as PDFs. I realize that what I am saying scares a lot of people, like it's somehow a security risk. Nobody will care about my money the way I do. Nobody can do it the way I do it. There's a giant risk of something terrible happening if I am not the one in charge of the money for my firm. That all feels rational, but it's entirely emotional. Think about the most successful business owner in your town with a slew of car dealerships and billboards and name on the Little League outfield fence. Is that person sitting at the kitchen table on a Sunday night reconciling accounts in a spreadsheet? The bigger and better the business, the less its owner touches not just the bookkeeping, but most of the finances. Now, this doesn't mean that you have no more responsibilities. You hand off the doing of the numbers, but you never hand off the watching of the numbers. Your job is to be informed and be monitoring and assessing where things are based on what's being reported to you. You aren't the one doing all of the number crunching. You should be getting the numbers on a schedule, likely more frequently than you were when you or somebody who had other work to do in the practice was the one in charge. So if you haven't already, I would encourage you to let it all go. This is the easiest work you will ever delegate. It is cheap, it is routine, businesses everywhere do it every day, and the bandwidth it frees up is immense. And there just aren't that many complicating factors. You will get much more standardized and efficient financial processes as a result. But if the all-at-once approach still freaks you out, fine. Here is how I would tackle it one project at a time. First, pick the single financial task that you hate the most. Managing invoices and bill payment, the payroll, expenses, whichever one you procrastinate on the most, and hand that off this week. And do the whole thing. Like I said, give them a firm email address or a phone number if you need to. Give them authority. And then once you've done this, tell your bookkeeper exactly what you need to see and when. Cash on hand against your next payroll, revenue and expenses trending over time, invoices over a certain amount, trailing 12-month graphs, whatever it is, but make sure it is measuring what you need it to measure and is presented in a way that's simple enough to absorb in one glance. You need to be actually looking at the reports and understanding them. They are no good if you aren't steering the ship based on the data. And make them commit to a schedule. Good bookkeepers don't say mid-month when they tell you something's going to be ready. They tell you a date they will have something done, and that is when it shows up. Noon on Friday, 15th of the month. And I know I have encouraged you to throw caution to the wind, but there are red flags to identify somebody who just isn't cutting it. Reports that stop arriving on a schedule, surprises of just about any kind, delays in reporting or data migration that drags on for weeks or months, a vague story instead of a number, unless you are literally in the middle of untangling something because somebody walked out the door or data is missing. Every question has an exact numerical answer. Anything else is a problem. Our internal bookkeeper turned out to be the textbook example of why you wouldn't want somebody else in charge of your finances, and the books were perfect. Handing it off wasn't the issue. The issue is being precious about what work you are slow at and ineffective at, and protecting mistakes that a pro would never have made. That's your moment of concise advice. Wrapping up from Jacksonville, thank you for joining us today. Never forget that what you are doing is important work. Small, consistent steps focusing on marketing, management, and technology are how we build better firms. And you are 1 week closer to the practice you deserve. Until next time, I'm Ned Days.
Thanks for listening to Your Law Firm. Subscribe to the Friday File at roseninstitute.com and join thousands of other lawyers who are working on instead of in their businesses. You'll find safe, successful, actionable approaches for transforming your practice. Join us today at roseninstitute.com.